Okay, so today we're going to do lesson 10.6, which has to do with factoring. Yesterday, we also learned a lesson that was over factoring. What we learned yesterday was if I have a problem that looks something like this, x squared plus 5x plus 6, I can factor that by saying, okay, let's list the factors of c, which is 6, so it's 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. I notice that this is a plus sign here, so I need to find the factors that are going to add together to give me 5. I realize that 2 plus 3 is going to equal 5. Then I can write my answer. My answer when I am factoring is always going to be written in 2 parentheses, always. When I have a problem like this, I start off by writing x's in the front and then the factors that I used in the back, 2 and 3. In order to find out what signs I need, okay, I look at this sign again. It's a plus sign. The sign in front of C is a positive. So I know that my signs are either going to be plus, plus, or minus, minus. And how I figure that out is I look at the sign in front of B. If it is a plus, the signs will be plus, plus. If it is a minus, the signs will be minus, minus. So I notice it's a positive, so I put plus and plus. And this would be my final answer. Now, that's how you factor when you have a problem that does not have a number in front of x squared. Or technically, x squared does have a number, but it's not written, okay? So that's how we factor when there is no number written in front of x squared, okay? So today, we're going to learn how to factor an equation when there is a number written in front of x squared, okay? These are the 4 steps that you are going to use to factor this equation. They are different from yesterday's because think about it. Let's look at this practice problem that I've given you. 2x squared plus 11x plus 5. If I went by the rules of yesterday, okay, I would say, all right, let's list the factors of 5, which are 1 times 5. Will 1 plus 5 ever add together to give me 11? Never, okay? So that's not a possibility. That's not going to work. So this is how I can factor this equation when I have a number in front of x squared. That number is referred to as the letter A because in this problem that I've given you, this is the model of what this problem would look like. ax squared plus bx plus c. So it's going to be the number in A's position, all right? So step number 1 would be to multiply A times C together. I'm no longer just finding the factors of C. I've got to find the factors of what the answer of A times C is. So let's look. In this equation, A is 2 and C is 5. So let's multiply them together. 2 times 5 is 10. So I'm going to write the factors of 10. The factors of 10 are 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. All right, now I want to ask myself, since this is a positive sign right here, a plus sign, I need to find the factors that are going to add together to give me B, or 11. Obviously, those factors are going to be 1 and 10. 1 and 10, okay? Because 1 plus 10 equals 11. Now, this is where it gets different, okay? It can be difficult if you don't pay attention, so listen carefully. Whenever you go to write your next step, because normally in yesterday's lesson, all right, once I find my factors, I'm ready to write my answer. But we're not there yet. We've got another step in between there. So this is how you do that. You always want to start off with the very first term in your problem. That very first term is going to be 2x squared. I want to write that out. Now, okay, I'm going to use my terms, 1 and 10. All right, I'm going to write plus 1x plus 10x. And this is why I did that. Look right here at step number 3, where it says rewrite as ax squared, which is the first term, plus question mark x plus question mark x. The reason why I did question marks here, okay, was because those question marks are going to be the terms that you use. Every single problem, the terms you use will be different, okay? So I didn't want to put a number in there or a letter in there to make you think it's going to be that one every time, okay? It's going to be the terms you use. Then you always end the problem off with the term of C, which is the very last term in your original problem, which in this case is 5. Now, see what I did is instead of writing this original problem right here, basically I just took out the 11x and I plugged in the two terms that add to give me 11x. Okay? That's all that I did there. And the reason why I do that, or why I did that, was because I've got to have 4 terms in order for this process to work. If I don't have 4 terms, it is not going to work. Okay? The next step is called factor by grouping. All right? This is what you do when you factor by grouping. I'm going to take these 4 terms and I'm going to group them. The first 2 terms are going to get parentheses around them, and the second 2 terms are going to get parentheses around them. So I formed 2 groups, okay? Now I need to factor by grouping. So now that I've grouped them together, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the greatest common factor out of each group. The greatest common factor, I've got 2 different possibilities. I can have the greatest common factor, which can be a number, and I can have a greatest common factor, which can be a variable. I can also have both, okay? So what I'm going to do is I like to first look at the numbers that I'm dealing with. I'm going to do one group at a time. So I'm going to look at my first group, which is 2x squared plus 1x, okay? I notice that my numbers are 2 and 1. I need to find the greatest common factor, or the biggest number that will go into both 2 and 1, which is going to be what, Liberty? 1. Very good. 1 is the only number that is divisible by 2 and 1. Okay? It's not 2 because 1 cannot be divided by 2. I'd get 1/2, and I don't want to deal with fractions in this. Trust me, you don't. Okay? So, whenever my greatest common factor as a number is 1, okay, I'm not even going to worry about it. I don't even worry about writing it. Okay? Now I'm going to move on because, look, I see that both of these terms have x's. So that means no matter what, I know that I will have a greatest common factor in a variable because they both have x's. Now let's look at this. The first term has x squared, which means it has 2 x's basically. And the second term has 1x. Okay, it's just one of them there. So I need to find the greatest common factor, or what's the most x's that both of these can give. They both have to give the same amount. So how many can they give? 1. Very good. Because look, this one right here only has 1 to give. Now this one has 2, but if the other one doesn't have 2, it can't give that much. Okay? If I've got $5 and you said give me 10, sorry, not possible. I don't have $10. I only have 5. That's the most I can give you. That's the same type of thing here. If you've got 2 and 1, sorry, I've only got 1 to give. That's the most I can give. So what I do is when I find a greatest common factor, I'm going to take it out of the problem. Now, I'm not going to take it out and remove it and say it's vanished, it's gone. No. What you do is when you take out the greatest common factor, you move it to the outside of parentheses. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite everything in parentheses without that term that I've taken out. Okay? Obviously, I didn't take any numbers out. So 2 is going to stay the same. But I did take out an x. So originally, I had an x squared here. But if I took one of those x's away, how many am I left with? Just 1. So I'm going to write 2x. Okay? Then, again, I did not do anything to the 1. So I'm going to leave it just there because I didn't take any numbers out here. Well, technically, I guess I could have taken out a 1, but 1 divided by 1 is still 1. Okay? And, again, I had 1x to give, and I took it out. So how many am I left with? None. If it only had 1 to give and I took that 1 out, there is no x's left. So I'm just going to write that last term as 1. It doesn't have a variable beside it anymore because that variable that it did have is sitting out here on the outside of parentheses. Okay? That's how you take out the greatest common factor. Now, let's do the same thing to the second set of parentheses, my second group. All right, let's start with the numbers. I've got 10 and 5. What is the greatest common factor or the biggest number that can come out of both 10 and 5? 5. Very good, because 10 can be divided by 5 and I get 2. 5 can be divided by 5 and I get 1. Okay? What's 5 divided by 10? Again, 1/2. I can't do that. Okay? So I've got to look for the biggest number, which is 5. Now, careful. Notice what I just did there. I put a plus sign in front of the 5. And the reason why I did that is whatever that sign is that is in front of your first term will always go in front of the greatest common factor. Always. So if there's a plus 10 right there, I make that a plus 5. Now, I look and I see that 10 has an x beside it. But does 5 have a variable? No. So I know that there's no possible way that I can take out variables. Because the 10 has one, but the 5 doesn't. So we can't take it out. So what I do, when I take out the greatest common factor of a number, I put it on the outside. Again, remember, it's not just going to go away. It's going to go on the outside, okay? And I've got to rewrite everything in parentheses without this 5. How I do that is I divide. So if I had 10, I divide by 5, and I get what? 2. I didn't do anything to the x, so I leave the x just where it is, okay? I had 5. And I divide by 5, which leaves me with 1. Now look what I have here. I have x times 2x plus 1 plus 5 times 2x plus 1. Look at what's inside of these parentheses. It is identical. That is not by a coincidence. That is on purpose, okay? If you get to this step and you have something different in each set of parentheses, then you've done something wrong. You always want it to be the exact same. Always. Okay? And if you take out the greatest common factor, it always will be. Alright, so now I'm going to go to my last step and I'm going to write my final answer. And this is how you do it. Remember at the beginning of the lesson I said, when you factor, your answer will always be written as 2 parentheses. Always. So I've got to figure out what's going to go in each of these parentheses. What I look at is, I'm going to look at these greatest common factors that I pulled out here. Each of those terms that got pulled on the outside are going to combine together and be placed in your first set of parentheses. So I'm going to write this as x plus 5. Now I've taken care of that. I know what goes in my first set of parentheses. Now look, you may say, but I've still got 2 things left and I've only got 1 parenthesis to put it in. How am I going to figure that out? Well, look at what's in those parentheses. Is it different? No, it's the exact same. So that works out perfectly for me. If they're both 2x plus 1, what do you think has to go in this last set of parentheses? 2x plus 1. Oh, yeah. 2x plus 1. So I write exactly what needs to go in that last parentheses. That's why, look, that's why it's so important that these are the exact same. Because if they're not the exact same, if I had 2x plus 1 and negative 2x minus 1, okay, I would go, what am I going to put in that last parentheses? I wouldn't know. It would be wrong. When it's the exact same, I know exactly what to put in that last set, and this is my final answer. Okay? Now, I can FOIL that, use FOIL, find what my answer or my original problem would be and see if it matches up. I'm not going to do that, though, for time's sake, but you can do that if you want to check your answers. Okay? So, let's put this into practice now. Step number 1 is going to be multiply A times C. First of all, A is 2, and c is 3. So multiply those together and I get 6. So let's list the factors of 6. What are the factors of 6? 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Now remember, since this is a plus right here, I need to ask myself, which ones add together to give me 7? 1 and 6, very good. Okay, so I'm going to start off, and I'm going to write my very first term that I see in my original problem, which is 2x squared. Then, in the middle now, I'm going to use the factors that I found that equal 7. So I'm going to put plus 1x plus 6x. And I knew that these were both going to be positive signs because this sign right here in front of the 7 is a plus. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I've got to write my very last term, which is 3. Okay, let's go ahead and let's do my factor by grouping. So I group the first 2 terms together and the last 2. And I need to find the greatest common factor. So let's look at the numbers, okay? 2 and 1. Chris, what is my greatest common factor of 2 and 1? Can 1 be divided by 2? No. So what does it have to be? 1. Very good. 1 is the only number that can go into both 2 and 1. Okay? So, that's a very common mistake. Make sure that you realize if I divide those numbers and I get a fraction, I've done something wrong. Okay? Alright, so 1 is my greatest common factor. When I have a 1, I don't even worry about it. Let's move on to the variables. I've got an x squared and an x. So how many x's can I take out of this problem? 1. Only 1. So when I take that greatest common factor out, remember, I put it on the outside. It doesn't vanish. It just gets put on the outside. Now I need to rewrite what is in parentheses without that x. The 2 stays the same because I didn't do anything to the numbers. If I had 2 x's and I took 1 out, how many am I left with? 1. Okay? I leave the 1 the same because I'm not going to do anything to it. If I had 1x and I took it out, how many am I left with? None. Very good. Move on to the next one. What is the greatest common factor or the biggest number that will go into both 6 and 3? 3. Very good. So remember, I'm going to take this plus sign that I have right here and I'm going to put plus 3. Can I take out a variable of each of these terms? No, because 3 doesn't have a variable to give, so I can't do that. So I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to use division. What's 6 divided by 3? 2. And I leave the x there because I didn't do anything to the x's. What's 3 divided by 3? 1. Now let's double check. In parentheses, do I have the exact same thing?
No. Yes.
Yes, I do. So I know I've done it correctly. How I write my final answer? 2 sets of parentheses. I take what is on the outside of each of these, my greatest common factor, and that goes in my first set of parentheses. The terms that are inside of my parentheses, 2x plus 1, will go in my second set. Because they're the exact same, I know I've done it right. Now it's going to be 2x plus 1. This is my final answer. Okay? All right, let's do the next one. Multiply a times c,
10.
which equals 10. Very good, because 5 times 2 is 10. Factors of 10 are 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. Any other factors of 10? No. All right? So I got to figure out, since this is a positive here, which ones add together to give me 7? 5 and 2. But let's wait, because I've got to figure out my signs here before I do anything. Since I know that this is a positive, I know that my signs either have to be plus, plus, or minus, minus. And I look to this sign to figure it out. What are they going to be? Minus, minus. So what I like to do is I like to write my little minus signs there. So I automatically know, okay, the 2 is going to have a minus sign in front of it. The 5 is going to have a minus sign in front of it. That way, when I go to write it, I can just write it quickly. Okay? First term is going to be 5x squared. Now ask yourself, what is going to be the best term to pair with 5x squared? 5x or 2x? 5x. Because look, they are most alike. So when you go to take out the greatest common factor, it's going to be easier. Now, if you would have put the 2x there and the 5x second, you're still going to get the same exact answer. I just like to do it this way because I think it's easier to couple the terms when they're just alike. Then negative 2x, then plus 2 goes on the end because that's C right here. I put in parentheses here. All right. Now I need to take out the greatest common factor of this first set of terms. What's the greatest common factor of 5 and 5? 5. Very good. 5 can go into both of these. All right. Now, I've got x squared and x. How many x's can I take out? 1. So I pull that x on the outside. What's 5 divided by 5? 1. If I have 2 x's and I took away 1, how many am I left with? 1. What's 5 divided by 5? 1. If I had 1x and I took it away, how many am I left with? None. All right, now pay attention right here. Listen up. Anytime at all, a first term in the parentheses is negative, you have to take out the negative greatest common factor. If you don't, it will be wrong. Okay? Anytime this first term, just like right here, negative 2x is negative, you have to take out the negative greatest common factor. You have to. You can't take a positive out or it won't be right. Okay? So what I'm going to do is, what's the greatest common factor between 2 and 2? 2. So I'm going to put on the outside of parentheses negative 2. All right? What's negative 2 divided by negative 2? 1. Obviously, I didn't do anything to the x, so I'm going to leave it there. What's positive 2 divided by negative 2? Negative 1. Now, does what's inside of parentheses match up? Yes, it does, so I know I've done it correctly. Let's write the final answer. What would be in my first set of parentheses?
5x minus 2.
Very good, 5x minus 2. What would be in my second set of parentheses?
1x minus 1.
Very good, 1x minus 1. This would be my final answer. All right, let's go to the last example here. Okay, now, on the last two problems, we dealt with when C was positive. So I knew, okay, I've got to figure out which factors add together to give me the B, or the middle term. Now I look and I realize that C is negative. So I'm going to ask myself which factors subtract to give me that middle term. All right? I'm going to start off with the exact same way that I always do and multiply A times C. What's 6 times 8?
48.
48. So I need to go ahead and start listing the factors of 48 because there's quite a bit of them. 1 times what?
48.
2 times? 3 times? 16. 4 times? 5? No. 6? 6 times 8. 7? No. 8? We already wrote it. 9? No. 10? Nope. All right, so I'm good to go then. All right, now remember, like I just said, since this is a negative, I've got to figure out which two numbers subtract together to give me 2. 6 and 8. Very good, because 8 minus 6 is 2. Perfect. Now, also, remember this. Because this is a negative number, I know that the signs in my parentheses, one is going to have to be a positive and one is going to have to be a negative. And I've got to figure that out. And again, I like to figure that out before I even write it down so I know exactly what I'm dealing with. So I look at the sign in front of B. Whatever that sign is has to go with the largest term. So in this case, it's a negative. So the negative has to go with the largest term. Which one is my largest term? 8. So I know the positive has to go with the 6. All right? Again, I like to go ahead and figure that out so I know what to do. So now let's write our terms. 6x squared plus 6x minus 8x minus 8. Group it together. What's the greatest common factor of 6 and 6? Very good. What is the greatest common factor of x squared and x? X. Now I got to rewrite what's in parentheses. 6 divided by 6 is 1. If I had 2 x's and I took out 1, left with 1. 6 divided by 6 is, if I had 1 x and I took it out, left with none. Now what am I going to pull out of the second set of parentheses? Negative 8. Very good. Because that's a negative sign right there, remember, I have to pull out a negative 8. Obviously, I look and I can't pull out any variables. So negative 8 divided by negative 8 is what? Positive 1. And I leave the x. Negative 8 divided by negative 8 is positive 1. Does what's inside of my parentheses match? Yes, it does. So let's write my final answer. 6x minus 8 and 1x plus 1. All right, last example. All right. What's my first step? Somebody tell me my first step. Multiply what? A and C, which gives me 21. Somebody tell me the factors of 21. 1 times 21 and what? 3 times 7. Okay? Somebody tell me, which ones would you choose and why? Why would you choose 3 times 7, Liberty? Because they subtract together to give me 4. All right, Liberty. Now I've got to figure out, since I know that this is a minus sign here, one of these terms is going to have to be positive and one's going to have to be negative. Somebody tell me which one's going to be positive and which one's going to be negative. Colton? Look at the sign in front of B. What is the sign in front of B? So which term is going to be positive? The 7. The biggest term is going to be positive. And the 3 is going to be negative. Okay? Now, let's write what my problem is going to be. Brandon, tell me. How would I write it?
3x squared. It's 1x. No. Yeah, 1. No.
Somebody help him out. What would my next term be? Sam?
Minus 3x.
Okay, then?
Plus 7x.
Then minus 7. Very good. Remember, I take the first term out of my original problem, then use the 2 terms that I have here that I circled in the middle, and then take the last term of my original problem. All right, Jay, what would I do next?
Take away 1 from the thing.
Okay, so I need to do the greatest common factor, so I've got to group them together. Put parentheses around it, okay? Chase, tell me, what would I do next? Okay, and what is that number that's going to go into both of them? 3. What else can I take out, Chase? An x. Very good. What am I going to have left in parentheses? Very good. All right, Connor, tell me, what am I going to take out of my second set of parentheses? Is this first term a negative? No. So do I need to take out a negative 7? No, just make it a what? Positive 7. All right, what am I going to be left with, Connor? Minus 1. Very good. Okay. How would I write my final answer, Chris?
3x plus 7.
Very good. All right. This is how you factor when you have a term in front of x squared. Now, I want you to look at this really quickly. Yesterday, we've already done this problem, but I'm going to show it to you. Yesterday, we did problems that look like this. Today, we did problems that look like this. Okay? So what you've got to remember is yesterday, remember we just said, okay, list the factors of 6 and go ahead and write our final answer. Figure out what signs need to be in there. Remember, the reason that we had to do something totally different is because that number in front of x squared. You need to be able to determine which problem you're going to have to use which method with. Don't look at this and go, oh, okay, I need to put a 1 in front of that, so I multiply 6 times 1, do all the factor by grouping, because that's going to take you a really long time and take a lot of work. And you don't have to. Now, will you still get the same answer? Yeah, sure, it is. But it's just going to take you a lot longer to get there. So just remember, if it has nothing in front of the x, use the first way that we learned, which was yesterday. If it does have something in front of the x, a number, okay, use the way that I taught you today. All right, so that's the end of factoring.